Hello everyone, and welcome to Community Forum. I have local author Paul Tremblay with us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so excited. This was one of those interviews when we started talking about you coming in. I said, absolutely, I want to be there. I want to interview him. So thank you. And there's a lot to talk about. So hopefully we can get through most of these questions that I have, but then I have something a little fun for the end that I thought would be cool after reading some excerpts from your short stories that we'll do at the end. But I guess, just for folks here in Stoughton to have a better understanding about you and, knowing that you're in this town, if you want to give a little background about, when you came here and all that.
So, I grew up in Beverly, Massachusetts, on the North Shore, as we say. My wife is from Scituate, so when we got married, and when we were ready to buy a house, like Stoughton was a nice middle point in between both families. So it was a little bit of just luck. We were just looking in sort of this metro. Yeah. Is it even Metro West? What do we call this area?
South Shore.
South Shore?
Shore.
But we're not on a shore.
But we're on the shore.
Well, so Stoughton was like, the area that was like a good middle point for us, and also for where we worked too. It was a reasonable commute, and that was in 1999. So we've been here for 20 years now. It's just hard to believe how fast it's gone. We've had 2 kids. One just went off to college. Couldn't get away from me fast enough. He's in Los Angeles currently.
Oh.
Yeah, Occidental College.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
He's a good kid.
Oh. And you have another.
And I have a daughter who's a freshman at Stoughton High right now.
That's great.
It was funny, it's right around that time, like a lot of things were changing. We bought the house, and then like a year later we had, my son Cole, and that's really when I started getting serious about writing. Because, I didn't go to college I wasn't an English major in college. I actually was a math major and even got my master's degree in math. And for some reason it was like, after I got my first teaching job and started teaching, I was like, I'm gonna try to write some stories. It's sort of like a weird, I still can't fully explain like why I had that itch to try something like that, but I did. That's
pretty cool. I think that when you enjoy something, you kind of naturally end up doing some form of something to do with that.
Yeah, I definitely had like a want for some sort of creative outlet. I think even now, if there was like an alternate reality where I was a punk guitar player or metal guitar player, I would choose that still.
Really?
Because that was my first love, music. I'm definitely a big music nerd. And I tried, like I know how to play the guitar. I'm like adequate,
cool.
But I quickly found out I was a better writer than a musician, so I said, okay, I guess I'll be a writer.
Yeah, but that's creativity too, because in music, if you're a musician,
Definitely.
right, it's a lot of creative juices with that too, and writing is kind of all that creative stuff happening.
Yeah. And I get a lot of inspiration from music. Actually, a lot of my story and even novel titles have come from books or from stories that I've read. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I should say the other way around. The titles of my stories and books have come from music lyrics or music titles.
Yeah.
Like A Head Full of Ghosts, the novel that's been sort of my most popular book. That is a very close riff to there's a punk band called Bad Religion, and they had a song called My Head Is Full of Ghosts.
Oh.
And when I first had the idea for that novel, that song was like really running through my head.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, good band, by the way.
Oh, good.
Hey, yeah, good band. Oh, okay, that's very interesting. So, it was, just talking, like starting off and talking about like your family and your wife and all that. I, did a little bit of homework, and I had kind of learned that. So when you first met your wife, she gave you a book.
Oh, that's right.
That meant quite a bit to you, and it's kind of brought you onto this further path of where you are too, right?
Yeah.
In a way, and it was The Stand by Stephen King. That
Yeah.
was the first Stephen King book you ever owned. Is that?
That was the first one I ever read from start to finish.
Yep.
It was funny. When I was 18, I had a spinal fusion surgery because I had scoliosis.
Oh wow!
It was like right after I graduated high school. I had this major back surgery, and I was home alone that whole summer, just recovering. And so that was the first time I tried to read Stephen King, and I tried to read It. I was like, I'm going to be home alone in my house. I'll have nothing to do. I'll read this big 1,200-page book.
Oh wow!
And the first chapter so scared me. It was the only time I've literally taken a book and thrown it across the room. It's like I'm not going to be stuck in the house all summer, terrified.
And have nightmares.
Yeah. So fast forward, 4 years. It really. Lisa was an English major, and I was a math major. I used to playfully make fun of her. I was like, "Oh, you English majors, you just make it all up as you go." Whereas math, we have, so that was like a playful. Now it's sort of funny, like our jobs have sort of switched because she does marketing for Papagino's, and she has to deal with real numbers, has to deal with deal with the marketing plan and the budget and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
But yeah, for my 22nd birthday, she bought me Stephen King's The Stand.
yeah.
And it really was. There was another story that I'd read really recent, close to reading The Stand, but yeah, I mean that book helped me fall in love with reading. So I spent the next 2 years struggling through math graduate school and doing like the long distance relationship thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I spent those 2 years reading all of Stephen King's books, and then through him I found a
Wow.
bunch of other writers, and that's really what turned me into wanting to become a writer, was first falling in love with reading.
Yeah.
At a relatively later age than most writers, I think. Because I was like 23,
Yeah.
22, 23, 24.
But something about that writing grabbed you, and
Yeah, no, absolutely.
and you can see some influence. Like again, I've read some of your stuff, which it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, so aside,
yeah.
I guess aside from like the weird stuff and the horror stuff, what I think, what still draws so many people to Stephen King's work is he writes about people that most people, particularly people who live in New England, and if you're living in suburban New England, he's writing about people, or a small town New England, he's writing about people that he's writing
Yeah.
about people that you meet, and he does so like in a brilliant way, like his characters really come to life.
Yeah.
And really before King, there weren't a lot of horror writers who were doing that. Most horror stories were like gothic, castle,
Yep.
haunted house, the aristocrats, and here was a guy writing really like middle class, even working class sort of fiction. And I know that appealed to me because I am the son of a factory worker and a bank teller, so those are the
Wow.
people that I knew, and and here I was reading stories about those people. So I know that really sort of set my wheels in motion a little bit too.
Yeah. And I think like by reading some of your work, which I know we'll kind of get more into your books, but I could feel that too. Like when I was reading, we were talking a little before this, and it was just, especially like the short stories, when they're so different, but not really, where you actually can see yourself thinking that way at some point, and you don't know when you switch to that, right?
Yeah.
But it happens, and I think a lot of the things that you've written, or a good amount of them, are kind of based out of things around Stoughton, right? Like your time in Stoughton.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I tend, my novels especially, the 3 most recent ones, A Head Full of Ghosts, Disappearance at Devil's Rock, and The Cabin at the End of the World. The thing I always tend to be going back to, like we talk about Stephen writing about the towns, I tend to write more about families. It's even like not all of my stories, but many of my short stories, even almost by accident, end up being about a small family, or it's from the point of view of teenagers thinking about their parents, or vice versa. A lot of them are about parents figuring out what the heck are we doing, having kids, and how are we going to deal with this?
Yeah.
That's just me and my own sort of anxieties playing out, and interests. I mean, being like, especially like being a kid. So it's not like YA fiction, even if I have like a YA young adult fiction.
Yep.
It's not, just because it's from like involves kids or from their point of view, it's not YA fiction. But to me, it's like one of the few universal experiences that we all have. It's like being a kid.
Yep.
I don't know, and I've been a high school teacher my whole professional life too. So I feel like in a weird way I've never left the kids' calendar. Every June I'm so excited to be off for the summer, and every
That's
September
awesome.
I'm like super depressed.
Well, it's
and
a
I
long
think
time.
I think that helps, as just it puts my head in that sort of emotional space. So even though as I'm getting older, like I forget specific things that happened in my childhood, I still feel like I have just vivid memories of the emotional life of a teenager, of that both excitement and fear of the future that teenagers grapple with, especially nowadays. So I don't know, I tend to always gravitate toward that as a writer.
That's an interesting way of putting it, because you're right. Because the past does get blurrier, the specific memories.
Right.
You still remember some things, but specifics, and having life that you have now and trying to apply some of that to today, it's kind of hard when you can't even remember how did you handle it, or what did you go through when you were a kid,
Right.
to be able to even acknowledge it. But you had also mentioned, and I think this goes to that empathy, where a lot of the, like I had said, when I read your work, I almost feel like that, and you said it's that empathy, it's the way that you write, it makes you actually see that other side, like looking at it from that point of view. And I think that's what we try to pull from our past too, to make decisions. Right. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, on how like you actually think about like, how do you come about, writing these things?
Yeah, well, I mean, I typically, if I have an idea, I do try to find like who are the people that are going to be involved, and that's important to me. Like, I feel like my strength as a writer is characters over plot. Like, plot for me is like really hard.
Yep.
Which I don't know if that's like goofy to say as a writer writing stories, but to me that's the hardest part. I'm more interested in the characters, and honestly, I think that's the job of fiction. I take it seriously. I think, as a someone who works in the school district. I could point to just hundreds of studies about people who read fiction have more the ability to empathize with others than people who don't read fiction. And I think it's true because when you're reading fiction, you're reading about characters who aren't you, and especially and if it's compared to just nonfiction, where you're getting into the heads of these other characters. And I don't know, like I take that as for me, it's a serious thing, like the idea of empathy compared to sympathy. And in a horror story, I think you can really sort of raise the stakes. I don't know if you've ever read or heard, but Stephen King's son, since we brought him up earlier, Joe Hill is a best-selling author in his own right. He sells millions of books. He has a TV show on AMC right now. But Joe Hill fairly recently described horror as extreme empathy, and I really like that description.
Yeah.
Listen, I understand like horror has baggage. When I say horror to the average person, they usually just sort of like glaze over. I'm sure in their heads they're imagining, like a Friday the 13th or to me, which can be fun, but sometimes I think those are like the worst representatives of horror. I mean, I like horror that makes you feel for the characters. So I really like Joe's description of horror as extreme empathy.
Yeah, you're throwing me off too, because I would say my idea of horror before even thinking about who's Paul Tremblay and what's this, right, was I'm petrified of, I watch it every Halloween, but it's the movie Halloween, the original. Just because it's like, whoa, what, like that's mortifying and scary.
No,
but
absolutely.
I watch it, but then I think about one time going to, we were down Fall River, it's the haunted, that house, what's her name? With
Lizzie
the axe.
Borden?
Lizzie Borden house. And going there and feeling completely different about just the situation in the story with that, I think the piece of empathy, where it impacted me so much more than going to a haunted house, like a one that you go through and everybody jumps out. And
I mean, if Lizzie had in fact did it, because there are people who argue that she didn't. But if she did in fact do it, so the way I approach it as a horror writer is like, okay, why did she do it? I want to know why she did it. And again, it's not sympathizing with her. It's empathizing. You just don't want to understand why people do things. I don't know. I tend to obnoxiously boil down a horror story. To me, a horror story, well, any story, there's a reveal of some sort of truth during the story, or in any art. And in a horror story, it's obviously a terrible truth, right? There's a reveal of, either scary or horrible truth, and it could be a personal truth, a societal truth, or even a universal truth. And to me, what I'm most interested in is I want that reveal to happen like somewhere in the middle of the story, or even like maybe the 2/3 point. Because then to me, the real like interesting part, or even the scariest part of the horror story is, what are the characters going to do now that this has happened? As opposed to, just like, the Twilight Zone twist at the end. Those are fun, but particularly in a novel, I want to know, like, there's this thing that happens. And then what? Like, I'm always asking, and then what?
What? Now that I know what's happening, really what's coming.
Then it's not to say, like, in the end of my books, there isn't, like, other twists, but, like, I don't know, like, those kind of twists are more, hopefully, reflections of what had happened already. Like, or maybe a different way to look at sort of that central horror reveal of the truth. I don't know.
I get what you're saying. It's just, I think myself not being a horror, I wouldn't even say just horror in your case, but like a horror book person or reading all of that, just getting to look at some of your work, like I said, when you read it, you're kind of like, oh, but there were some, but there were some pieces where, and I guess we probably should talk about, like, your books, and then what's out right now, but I'm kind of alluding to one of them where you have a series of short stories, and they're not all horror. It's just fascinating how you go into them, and there's some based around town, so you actually can empathize again with the situation. but I actually giggled at one in particular, and I was just like, oh, this is funny, because I could picture it.
Right.
Because you actually are feeling like that, that experience, which I guess I'll say, one of them was notes from the dog walkers, which was hysterical.
Right.
But
so that's a story, and so my most recent book is Growing Things and Other Stories, and it's a collection of 19 short stories. Like three of the 19 have connections to my other novels. So if people have read some of my other books, hopefully that's like a fun thing. But you definitely do not have to have read the previous novels to get into the stories. In fact, Notes from the Dog Walkers actually has a connection to A Head Full of Ghosts and Disappearance at Devil's Rock.
No kidding.
But the title of the story sort of describes how it begins. The story opens with a horror writer named Paul ..
Yes.
Hi. Hiring a dog walking company because he needs his dog walked like 2 or 3 days a week. And the story is told through the notes left by dog walkers.
Yeah, which are it's just
so they start off like actual notes that dog walkers would leave, and then they start becoming increasingly bizarre and increasingly like intrusive into the writer's life and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, I was hoping that it would be fun and funny, but at the same time it would start to get a little bit creepier. And even if you're not a writer, my hope was like the story you would feel anxious because I think it might reflect on the fear of letting strangers into your house or letting strangers into your life. Whether it's a dog walker or whether it's like you're on Facebook or in any social media, like how much of you are you putting out there, and who are these people that are reading about your stuff?
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
just found out that you were reading about me online. I'm just
Yes,
kidding.
I was stalking you. No, but yeah, but the thing is, you're right, because there's so many other components within it. So like there was like different emotions where, so you have that piece and you're like, I'm giggling, but then I was reading it and then I was like, kind of like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is a little sinister, but in a way you, again, could put yourself in that position and say, wow, that's sad, like in a creepy way.
Yeah, that's the hope. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool.
Thanks.
I thought it was pretty cool, but I do, let's talk about, Head Full of Ghosts, just because that was kind of, I would say you've, written many novels, but that was one that Stephen King actually commented on.
Right, no, without a doubt, that book changed my life.
Yeah.
And his reaction to it changed my life. So I guess I would just briefly say A Head Full of Ghosts is sort of like a 21st century riff on The Exorcist. So there are these two sisters, Marjorie and Mary. Marjorie is 6 years older. So for most of the book, Marjorie's 14 and Mary's 8 years old. I'm making this sound way more confusing than it is. But,
I'm following now.
And so the question throughout the whole book is, Marjorie may or may not be possessed.
Okay.
Maybe she's having sort of a psychotic break or a schizophrenic break, some sort of mental health issue, or is she possessed? And I'm not. This is not a spoiler for the book. I never, as the author, come out and say like on page 300, this is exactly what happened. That's the central question through the whole book, and it's up to the reader to decide what happened. Because all sorts of things come in and sort of muddy those waters. Because one, the book is told from the point of view of the younger sister. And she's telling it like 15 years later when she's 25 or 24 or 23 or whatever she is. She's remembering what happened to her sister and her family.
Yeah.
Because her sister had these weird symptoms, and then the family was desperate because the dad was laid off, and they needed money, but desperate to help their daughter. They hired a reality TV show to come in and document like the few weeks leading up to an attempted exorcism.
Wow.
So the book bounces a little bit between what had happened in the past and what's happening now with the older sister. So anyway, that book was a lot of fun to write. It's the first time in my writing life where I felt like really good at the end. Like, I think this is good. I have no idea if it's scary or not. To me, I can't judge what's scary. Like, the scare is so subjective to me.
Yeah.
So I just hope like it'll be emotionally affecting in some way.
Okay.
I know if it's dark. So 2 months after the book came out, it was August 19th, 2015.
Aww.
I've got it memorized. And a tattoo on my back. I don't know.
Oh, I was like, wow. You committed to that book.
No, I was at home like moving furniture, and no one likes moving furniture because we bought like a new table and it was hot, and it was a couple weeks before school, so I was bummed out. And then my phone, as the kids say, started just blowing up because
of Twitter?
People had saw that Stephen King tweeted, "Paul Tremblay is a head full of ghosts, scared the living hell out of me, and I'm not easy to scare."
Yeah.
Just even like how he said that, I think that really resonated with people, like because he recommends books all the time. Like, to have him say that,
it's a big deal.
Oh, it changed the book. I mean, it changed how it sold. It still sells like, 50 to 100 copies a week. I mean, that's so rare these days, for a book that's been published for 4 years already now. So Stephen is super generous, super kind. I haven't met him in person, but because of that book, we exchange emails and stuff. And he's read my other books and has been really supportive about them. Even with the most recent short story collection, he tweeted that it's one of the best collections of the 21st century.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So Stephen has been very, very nice to me. Uncle Steve, I'll call him.
Uncle Steve. Well, you know what? It was good. Like I said, I don't generally read, those type of books, and it was really good. I was like, oh, it was like an emotional roller coaster, but a little sinister. Like it had that. I don't know. Maybe that's not the right word, but it was a little creepy.
Well,
it was definitely creepy.
I mean, my hope is that people who don't identify as horror fans would read the book and enjoy it. But also, I would like horror fans to read it too. Like, I don't know.
Absolutely.
That's sort of my thing is I feel like horror is sort of like a big umbrella, and like a lot of people I think have like a real narrow view of what horror is. So I don't know. I like to think of horror as including a lot of different things, like I don't know, like Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, or things that people might be like, oh yeah, maybe it's creepy, maybe it's not.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Some of it, as I was reading, I was like, this may be, it's a little creepy, maybe not, I don't know,
Like a lot of my stories are like sort of, so I mentioned with The Head Full of Ghosts, I don't tell you if she's possessed or not. Like there is plenty of information for you to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even say that. That makes it sound like there's an answer. There's plenty of argument/information. If you want to believe there's nothing supernatural happening, you could build a case.
Yep.
But someone else could also equally build a case that something supernatural is happening.
Sort of like a lost.
So to me, the point is not, is she really possessed? The point is the creepiness and horror of ambiguity, of not knowing. And a lot of my stories mess around with that because I feel like that more closely reflects our day-to-day lives. I mean, I think most of us go through life without thinking too much about, memory, identity, and like, what is reality. But if you really sit down and think about it, things get a lot more blurred than we like to think they are.
I think you
were talking about memory earlier. Like we talk about our memories, and our memories make us who we are. It's part of what makes us who we are. But like our memories change after however many years. And sometimes memories get changed in the retelling. Memories get changed by other people talking about what had happened. So to me, that's just like really interesting. And I try to, as a horror writer, that's a fun thing to play around with, because once people are sort of unsteady or uneasy, I mean, that's sort of the effect. I think that's I can go for that effect more than I can go for scare. Because scare, like what scares you might not scare me. But I can go for unease or unsettling, I think.
So I'll say two things. I'm afraid to know what scares you. And the second thing is, I just knowing that you have such a big fan in Stephen King and how successful things have been, I was looking up online just about some of your books, and it was funny because there was a forum, and someone said at the end of the book, I'm confused. So what ended up happening? And there was like 3 different people with 3 different answers.
Theories,
It was awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it kind of, and I read it going, okay, all right. So I know I'm going to read that book, but I was like, okay. And makes your point very clear that that's what it was meant to do, and that's what's so cool about it. You know what I mean? I
also know that I can't do that every time. Like people get tired of it. And it has to be there for a reason. Like the ambiguity becomes really the theme of A Head Full of Ghosts. That's why it's there. The book is about living in this sort of weird, ambiguous time that we live in. And the same with the other 2 novels that came after it, with the most recent being The Cabin at the End of the World. It was really about living in the sort of the post-truth, political anxieties, that we're living through now. So the novel that I have coming out next summer, which maybe we can talk about more later, it doesn't have an ambiguous element to it. I fake an ambiguous ending just to make people mad, but then
you're such a troublemaker.
You would ask what scares me though, to go back. I'm the world's biggest scaredy cat.
Really?
I mean, oh yeah. I mean, as a kid, I was the worst. Like I had to sleep with stuffed animals arranged around my head with a little air hole.
Oh, the answer's coming out
Yeah.
for everyone watching now. This is where it's now.
No, like I still freak my own stuff doesn't freak me out. It's always other movies or other books or just
Really?
being home alone in the dark, or if I wake up after having a terrible nightmare, I'm totally freaked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I get scared very easily.
So then tell me, you have to. So what would be your favorite scary movie and your favorite scary book?
So I sigh because there's so many that are my
Interesting.
favorites. My favorite is probably John Carpenter's The Thing.
Okay.
It takes place.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell's the star.
Yeah.
It was made in like '81. I think it came out like 2 weeks before E.T. did. So when it came out, it actually bombed.
Yeah.
But it has since become like a classic.
It's a cult classic.
And I think most people have seen it. And
Yep.
one of the it's just a brilliant movie. It is scary.
Yeah.
And gross, but it's just so smart. Like even my son, who's not a horror fan at all, loves The Thing.
Yeah.
So again, that sort of connection where like non-horror people would still like,
Yep.
oh yeah, this is a really good movie. So The Thing has stopped scaring me, like because I've seen it so much. But
Right.
I just love.
But you still
watching that
enjoy
movie.
watching. Yeah, it's still a good flick.
Yeah, there's
so.
like a whole bunch that I'll give you like a semi-obscure one, or I guess I probably won't call it semi. It probably is obscure. It's an Australian movie called Lake Mungo that came out in 2008.
Never heard of
it
it.
was never in theaters around here anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just like this really quiet. It's a fictional documentary about this family dealing with the grief of the drowning of their 13-year-old daughter.
Oh.
So I mean that happens, before the movie starts. It's them dealing with the aftermath of it.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while you're not sure: is this a ghost story? Is there like a weird crime? Is there something else? And it's just. But the movie is really about grief. But there was a scene in that movie when I watched it, and of course, because no one in my family, my daughter likes horror movies now, but she was way too young
Yeah.
when I watched this in like 2009. So I was up late at night by myself, everyone's asleep, in the dark watching this movie. And there was one scene where I had the literal like hair standing up, chills. I had to
Stop it.
I had to break away from the TV and look at my phone.
That's
Just
awesome.
because I was so freaked out by what was happening. So I've become
awesome.
kind of obsessed with that movie. And actually 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity where a movie theater in Houston said, hey, we'll fly you down if we want you to pick a couple movies and we'll host them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
You had them play it?
Yeah, so I picked Lake Mungo and a different movie. And I talked like for 5 to 10 minutes before each movie. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's a kind of a neat way. I'm going to guess a scary book would be.
Oh, so scary. So The Stand has such a special place in my
Yeah.
heart. Because it really started just
Yeah.
me into Stephen King, but also just everything beyond that. But before I read The Stand, there was a short story by Joyce Carol Oates called "Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been?" Because I found my way into like a random English class, like my last semester of a senior year of college. So I sort of screwed up my major. I started off math education, but it's a long, boring story. But I ended up math humanities.
Okay.
And humanities was just like a hodgepodge of like history, philosophy, and I took one English class.
Yeah.
And she had us read the story, and when
This
I
is
read
all
it,
the influence. This is all of it.
When I read it, I remember thinking I didn't know people wrote things like this. Like that
Oh,
was sort of the
cool.
power of that story. In that story, there is ambiguity. It's especially for the Me Too moment. It's a story about an older guy who sort of creeps on this like 16-year-old girl. And he's trying to sweet talk her out of her house to go for a ride with him. Because it takes place in the late 60s. It was written in like early 70s.
Yeah.
She saw him cruising around, so she thinks he's sort of dangerous. But in the story, the way it's presented, he might actually be the devil himself. His name is Arnold Friend, which could be like an anagram for an old fiend. And like how the author describes it, like he's kind of short and maybe he stuffed like paper into his cowboy boots, or the way he walks, is it a hoof inside of his boot? And it's just a really strange, really affecting
so it has your brain
story.
really going on
Yeah.
what's. Oh,
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely would mention that story as a creepy
that's one.
story that set me off.
But I think that's interesting because we kind of talked about the fact that The Stand was that book that you got that you read from front to back,
Yeah.
and that really kind of charged you. But I think talking about your history and just everything, even that class, that kind of probably started
definitely.
propping you
Yeah.
to that.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That's
No,
pretty cool.
I usually mention that first and then The Stand.
Yeah.
But in terms of like why horror, it's weird to me because I almost have a hard time
Yeah.
when other people say I don't, because it's been a part of my life, my whole life. Not even so. My first exposure to horror was always movies. I'm going to age myself, and I don't know if you remember. There was a because you were in Massachusetts, you said
Yes,
originally, right?
yes.
So before cable TV, Channel 56, there
Oh,
was a
yes, turn the,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. They had a program on Saturdays called Creature Double Feature.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So when
Yeah.
I was like, 7, 8,
Yeah.
the first movie was a Godzilla movie, and
Yes.
the second movie was more a horror movie. So I loved Godzilla, and then the second movie would give me nightmares, and that's why I slept with the dinosaurs. But I kept watching them, even though they scared the hell out of me.
Well, that's funny you say that because that happens with me. Even every year I'll go to a haunted house, even though I come out hyperventilating.
Yeah.
But my girls will say, why do you do it? And I say, because if I don't, then my fear will take over. And that's why I get on roller coasters when we go to parks, because when you stop doing it, but for me, I'm like shaking, but then once you get it done, you're like, good, I did it, right? So that's my thing with scary movies and all those things. I think you just do it because it's kind of like you're facing that fear too, and making it part of something bigger, enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the thrill element to the horror movie, which I think a lot of horror fans sort of definitely get. I don't know, for me, I feel like horror is honest about, I don't know, I guess that makes me sort of a pessimistic person about the state of the universe, but I feel like horror is honest, and there's like a weird hope to horror too.
Yeah.
So like the hope of horror to me is, I talked about the reveal of a terrible truth, right?
Yeah.
Even if, after that terrible truth reveal, even if you're not going to survive, or even if, the monster isn't going to be defeated, even if no one's going to survive, there's still value and hope to me in the recognition that, we know that there's something terrible. Like we know the terrible truth. It's almost like a sort of like a punk attitude. Like, even though we might not win, at least we knew we were right, or we knew we were right about this terrible thing.
No, I get it. It's like you're coming again. You know what the end result's going to be, but you're still gonna do what you think's right.
You still try to go on.
Fight your truth. You're gonna you're gonna keep going, and I think that's huge. But we talked about a lot of so your books, and you've had some success with some tweets out there, but also I did find out just looking at some stuff that you may have had some knocks on the door from production companies about that they recently purchased some movie rights to some of your books.
Yeah, so A Head Full of Ghosts has been optioned. So
very cool.
That's slightly different than like actually purchasing the rights, which again, not exciting, sort of boring. They essentially rent exclusive access to your book for like 18 months. They won't actually outright buy the rights to your book until they start filming.
Okay. So they're
that's
looking
like
at
the
it.
big chunk. What's that?
But they're looking at it.
Yeah. So A Head Full of Ghosts has been optioned since 2015. It's been 4 years, and it's just been like eking steadily closer. So actually, we're really sort of like in a crucial moment where it could happen, like start filming in January, or it might just have to start over from scratch. But they do have a director and a screenplay that they like. That's pretty much all I can say about like what's going on there. And then The Cabin at the End of the World has been optioned as well.
Yep. Yeah. So that's we were just showing the book too, so which is pretty cool. And there's The Cabin at the End of the World, which is another fantastic book that's been quite successful. We were talking earlier. This is the book that has come very close to success.
Yeah. So like A Head Full of Ghosts, I mean, it never sold it sold pretty well, but never like bestseller right away, but it's been a consistent seller. So The Cabin at the End of the World was the first time I made it onto a couple of bestsellers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a week on each, but believe me, I'll take it.
Listen, take it. That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, no, thanks.
That's really super cool.
They're doing like a mass market edition of it later in October. The pocket size that you would see in a like a pharmacy or something like that. Oh, yeah. So that would be cool.
Did you ever walk through, like even at BJ's, they have a big book section. Have you ever walked through and saw your books and you're like, hold on, let me take a picture?
So a lot of my books haven't been into those. So Cabin will be the first. It'll be like in Walmart, and it'll be in like Target.
And Mad Mama Vintage in Stoughton, a local, I know that I had seen that they're offering one of your books and you're signing them.
Yeah, so Pam at Mad Mama Vintage has been very great, very supportive. So I have a deal with her, even like people who live in other parts of the country, if they want me to sign a copy of their book, they buy it from Pam, because it's like a 5-minute drive. I'll drive down there and sign it.
That's awesome.
So she's got a ton of signed copies there now, and
that's so cool.
And if she runs out, if you still would like a signed copy, she'll, we'll coordinate, Pam and I.
Yes, you'll get there. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's nice that at least we have the ability close by. I know with the age of going online and getting
Right.
everything off Amazon, I think sometimes having that book in hand, but also having a signed one from a local author, like you're in our town.
Right.
How much better is that? You
No,
know?
and I mean, even typically online, don't tell Amazon. If I post links, I usually post links to independent bookstores.
Yep.
Because they,
Oh, that's
they need
great.
your support. They should get your support, and they've made a huge comeback in the last like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
They're doing amazingly well, and the independent bookstores have been super supportive of my work, which
Oh, that's great.
I'm just so honored. That so many of those booksellers like the book. So yeah, definitely support BAM store. I don't know if people from other towns get to watch this or not, but support your local, independent bookstore and your library too, of course.
Oh yes, the library, which, speaking about that, I know that there's an event on the 30th of October.
right.
Do you want to talk about that quickly?
Yeah, so on October 30th, 6:30 p.m. it'll start. It's the day before Halloween, so we'll do, sort of a Halloween-themed horror event. So actually, I just got another local Stoughton resident who writes. He doesn't always write horror, but has written horror, Thomas Snignoski.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom, if I just butchered your name. He does comics. Thomas has done a bunch of stuff, and he's been writing for decades. He's a really fun guy too.
It's
He's
so
very funny.
cool. Yeah.
So it'll be a fun. I think it'll be a fun talk. 'Cause I'm 6'4". He's not.
Yeah. Well,
he's very
that's
funny.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but at this, so you're just going to be talking about the books, or you're going to be
so
reading
we'll-
parts?
So I guess Tom and I have to figure it out. Probably mostly discussion, maybe like
Mm-hmm.
a very short reading. But Pam from Mad Mama Vintage will be there too to sell books while
Yeah.
Tom and I are there. So it'd be convenient if you just want to go to the library, then Pam will have copies there
Right.
too.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just happened to come up. So the library, it's a great place. You can get the books, but
Right.
also you'll be there on October 30th.
October 30th, 6:30.
Yep, 6:30. So that's a great thing too. Now I have like all these questions, and I know we've been talking, and where.
Yeah, sorry, I get rambly.
No,
too. Yeah.
no. This is good information.
Yeah.
This is like fantastic, and I think that a lot of people want to get to know you and know, kind of where your headspace is, because those books are, we
Yeah.
kind of want to have an idea of where things come from. But looking at this, it's funny because you're a math teacher.
Right.
You're a high school math teacher.
Usually people react to horror to that.
Yes. Well, that
I
was
tell them
going
math teacher, I'm like, oh,
Oh, geez,
no,
it's scary.
Yeah.
But like, is it like, do your students, like, how do they react to your celebrity, I guess?
It's weird. I mean, I teach at a boys' school, and they're sort of like stereotypical, like jockey kind of boys
Yeah.
for the most part. But I mean, to be fair, I mean, they're getting a lot of homework at my school, so I know during the school year they don't have a lot of free time to read books. But no, I mean, I've got, once A Head Full of Ghosts came out, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna not promote. Like, I certainly don't hand my students my books,
course.
but I've got like Stephen King posters in my room.
Oh,
and,
cool.
I printed out the tweets, and they're up on the wall, so people are certainly aware. And I get kids ask questions. And actually, this year, I started a creative writing club at the school. I've already got like 16 kids
That's
signed up.
fantastic.
Yeah, so it'll be fun.
That might give the kids an opportunity for that moment, aha moment, like you had.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And last year, it wasn't related to the creative writing club, but for me, this was, as a parent, it was so awesome. So I mentioned my son Cole, my oldest, isn't a horror guy, and so he had never read any of my books, which is fine. I wasn't going to push him on him. So he took AP creative writing at my school last year, and the teacher decided, I'm going to have the kids read A Head Full of Ghosts.
Stop
So
it.
Cole was forced
No
to read A Head Full
way.
of Ghosts. And it was one of the most fulfilling experiences I've had as a writer / parent, because we had just an amazing conversation about the book. He really liked it. Yeah, it was great. So he's a funny kid. The
awesome.
funny part was after, so I went to their classes to talk. They wanted me to come in and talk after they
That's
read
so
the book.
cool.
So I would go to the classes. Classes is over. After the discussion, Cole gets up, just points at me and goes, "I have questions for you when I get home."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, A+.
Because he did see a lot of if we were to talk about the writing process, I steal from my
Bits
life
and
all the
pieces.
time. And so a lot of, I was writing about, for a lot of the book, an 8-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
So a lot of my kids' mannerisms and characteristics got put into those characters. Especially my daughter Emma was the age of Mary, the 8-year-old, as I was writing the book. So a lot of her got into it. But one of Cole's like personal peccadillos became like a really important plot point. So he was like, "Hey,
that's
you
pretty
owe me
cool."
Royalties. No, it wasn't cool. It's like, "You owe me." Like, well, we're paying for college, pal.
There it is.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool, though. That I think the cool part too is having your son read it and actually finding that, like, connecting with that.
I was very thankful to the teacher for that I got to have that experience.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. I think that you kind of mentioned you have another book coming out that's not going to be similar, I guess. It's Disappearance at Devil's Rock.
Oh, well, then that came out after A Head Full of Ghosts, so that was sort of sandwiched in between.
Okay.
So the book that's coming out next summer doesn't have a title yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm still arguing about that with my publisher. I shouldn't say arguing. I should say discussing.
So are you, so The Disappearance at Devil's Rock.
That came out in 2016.
And what, a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that story starts with, I don't know, I would say most every parent's worst nightmare, a missing child.
Yeah.
The first chapter is a single mom. She has going to sixth grade daughter, and her son is going into 8th grade, and she gets a call at like midnight because he was over at a sleepover. But he and his 2 friends had snuck out of the sleepover and went into Borderland State Park, the actual Borderland State Park in Easton Sharon.
Yeah.
And he disappeared and didn't come back. So that's how the novel opens. And I really try to play sort of like how her and the town and people would react to that realistically. So I mean, some of it's almost like a police procedural, but then there's, she sees something weird in her bedroom, like a shadowy, ghosty kind of thing, and then other people in town are claiming to see like a shadowy figure standing outside their window, and it sort of spirals out from there.
So creepy.
Yeah. So I mean, that's also it's a very sad book. I get accused of writing sad horror, and in that case, that book I would say in particular.
This one is
definitely. But yeah, before this book that was coming out next summer, that's definitely like my most local novel. Where, for whatever reason, I decided to rename Easton Ames. I don't know, because I was taking some liberties. So I was like, I mean, a lot of it happens at Borderland State Park, which is one of my favorite places to go. I take my dogs there all the time. And the Devil's Rock is, for those who may have hiked Borderland, there's a boulder called Split Rock. It's a really giant boulder that you can climb on. So, and the kids, it's really Split Rock, but the kids rename it Devil's Rock.
Yeah.
In the story for various reasons.
Very cool.
Yeah. So anyway, next summer's novel is, I guess it's sort of a riff on a zombie. I hesitate to call it a zombie, but it's more like a super rabies virus. And again, I'm trying to play it like realistic as possible, because rabies is crazy enough as it is.
Yes.
Rabies is
it's not
awful.
Yes.
And there's no other virus like it. Like, if you were to get bit by a rabid animal, there's no test.
No.
For rabies. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go into it too far, but there's no blood test. Rabies attaches to your nerve, and it crawls up your nerve to your brain. And if it passes through the brain barrier, you're done.
Wow.
Like, there's no cure.
So this is your book based on this.
Yeah. So normally, like, rabies takes like weeks for it to travel.
Yeah.
And the vaccines work as long as you get it before it gets to your brain.
Yeah.
So in the book, I move up the timeline, like where rabies, like if you got bit, it only takes an hour. So.
Oh. Yeah.
So this book, there is no supernatural element. It's, people infected by rabies in animals, and it's told in almost like in real time. It takes place in like 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
And it follows
Holy cow.
It follows a 37-week pregnant woman and her best friend, who's a pediatrician. And it really just follows them two for 4 to 6 hours trying to deal with this outbreak in our area, like, because the pregnant woman lives in Stoughton.
Yeah.
They try to go to a hospital, the Norwood Hospital.
Is that in the book?
Yeah.
Stop it.
So, and then from there, for various reasons, they end up on Bay Road and near.
That's so
Borderland
cool.
And stuff. Yeah.
So I know that before we started taping, we said that you had that book coming out, and you said you didn't have a name, and I said, name it Sandra. We're going to say no on that.
Rabid Sandra.
Yes, we're not going to do that now that we've kind of gone into the whole context of what that book is. But there's one thing, I mentioned Stephen King and kind of the kudos that you've gotten from him, but NRP also has said about your most recent novel, The Cabin at the End of the World. Read it and you won't sleep for a week. It's been described as a twist on the home invasion story, which is wild. That's something that there's been movies on, and it kind of gets your heart pounding type thing. So can you tell us a little bit about that book?
So oddly enough, when I had the idea for the cabin at the end of the world, and I got lucky. I have like what I call idea notebooks where I just like scribble in them. And I was actually on a plane ride back from Los Angeles. I happened to be doing like a book festival out there and wasn't even paying attention. And I looked down and I drew a little cabin. When I say I drew a cabin, I drew a square with a V on it because I can't draw. So when I saw the cabin, I instantly thought of home invasion stories, which is my least favorite kind of horror story. Partly because it is so icky, like because it can happen, right? Yeah. But typically, so many of the Hollywood home invasion movies are just like violence for the sake of violence and like torture-y, and I'm not into that. So I was like weirdly like excited. Okay, Mr. Big Mouth, how would you do a home invasion story that you would want to sit through? So crazy. The novel, I'll only describe like the first chapter because if I describe beyond that, I feel like it gives like really key spoilers. But the book opens with a 7-8-year-old girl named Wen. She's from China, but her parents, Andrew and Eric, adopted her. And they're up in a remote cabin in northern New Hampshire, fictional lake.
Jeez, it's creepy already.
They wanted to get rid of, unplug, so there's no cell phone, because I needed to have a horror story. So they're at this cabin like by themselves, and then Wen's outside like catching grasshoppers, and a stranger shows up. He's really tall, he's dressed in a certain way, and he sort of befriends her. Even though she knows better, she knows of stranger danger, but he's so charming. Yeah. And then 3 other strangers show up carrying like these weird like homemade weapons.
Holy cow.
As she runs into the house to warn her dads, Leonard, the guy who is the friendly one, says to her, is like, we're not here to hurt you. We need you to make a tough choice. We need your help. We need your help to stop the end of the world. This is how like the first chapter starts.
That is so cool.
So there's definitely like twists to the home invasion part. It is, I don't know, it is a really sort of intense book. Tough to get through, but hopefully I think it's rewarding ultimately. And it revolves around a lot of what I talked about, like the hope of horror and stuff like that.
Wow,
so, anyway,
that's really, that's really, really cool. I have a couple other things and I have something fun I want to do.
Okay.
So why don't we just take a quick break to just listen, get our public service announcements out there and a little something from our sponsors, and then we'll be.
Hi, this is Roy Cohen. The crew would like to thank Maxie's Delicatessen, located at 117 Sharon Street in Stoughton. You can reach them by calling 781-341-1662. The American Cancer Society is looking for volunteers to drive cancer patients to and from treatments. You can volunteer by calling 1-800-ACS-6662 or online at www.cancer.org. Ilse Mock's Food Pantry and St. Anthony's Free Market is located at 2 Park Avenue in Stoughton. For more information, call Christine Gallagher at 781-341-0611 or 781-341-0549. To get involved with Meals on Wheels, call Jessica at 781-344-8882, extension 2. The Stoughton Penny Saver. Our business is advertising your business in Stoughton. To advertise, call 781-344-4833. Community Forum showtimes here in Stoughton. You can see it on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at 6 p.m., Monday at 8 p.m., Tuesday at 5 p.m., either on Comcast Channel 9 or Verizon Channel 28. If you have any comments or suggestions, contact us at communityforum1@yahoo.com. Samaritans, 41 West Street, 4th floor in Boston, Massachusetts, 02111, or call them at 617-536-2460. The 24-hour helplines, 877-870-HOPE or 877-870-4673. Samaritans, 800-252-TEEN or 800-252-8336, or online www.samaritans.hope.org. For you bingo players, I want to tell you about the Monday night bingo being held at the Ahava Torah Congregation, 1179 Central Street in Stoughton. The doors open at 4:30 p.m. The games start at 6:30 p.m. You come on down and win some money. They have two big prizes. One is $1,199 and the other one is up to $3,000. So come on down.
And if you'd like to reach out to our guest for today, Paul Tremblay, you can reach him at www.paultremblay.net or start following him on Twitter, and his handle is @PaulG.Tremblay. We're back, and I know we have a little bit of time left, but like I said, I had a surprise, something I wanted to do that I thought would be fun. And then also, if we can just super quick, just give a shout out for your book, Growing Things, afterward.
Okay.
So these are a few of my favorite things. You know, that song that kind of gets into your head. I love the sound of music, totally different than your books and what we're talking about. But I wanted to ask you your top 10 favorite things. And we're going to do speed round.
Okay.
You ready for this?
I'll try not to be
all
rambly.
right. Right. Yeah, this is going to be quick. Favorite color?
Blue.
I knew that. Favorite band or music artist?
Husker Du.
Oh boy. Favorite football team?
The Patriots.
Oh, I don't like that, the way you said that, but okay. Favorite Dr. Seuss book?
Oh, Cat in the Hat.
Okay. Favorite game board? Come on, you work for Pocket
Nintendo.
Brothers. All right.
Game board, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess Monopoly, but that's not true.
Yeah, well, lie.
We'll stick with it, yeah.
Just lie. Favorite food of all time?
Pizza.
Wow, okay. Favorite dessert?
Chocolate chip cookies.
Favorite holiday?
Halloween now, come on.
Yeah. Favorite funny movie?
Oh, favorite funny movie. Blazing Saddles.
Okay, good. And what's your favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show. Well, I'm giving you two. As a kid, I watched MASH every day after school. So
great one.
Horror one, Hannibal.
Oh, so good.
Three season Hannibal.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty funny. It's funny. That was the speed round there, and the favorite game board I threw in only because I learned that you used to work at Parker Brothers. Which obviously got bought out. Was it Hasbro?
Hasbro.
That had brought in. It was game boards and all that, and you were like in the warehouse. See, I stalked you. But yeah, so that's interesting. And the response to the football team, you're like, Patriots.
Well, just partly because of who they most recently had on their team and had to cut. Like, it was getting kind of hard to root for them.
Yeah.
I love rooting for the underdog, so I understand why the rest of the country hate us, because I always root against the team that wins all the time.
Yeah,
so that's
we've been there.
But I went through, I've been a Patriots fan my whole life, so I've earned it. I went through the 80s and 90s when they won like one game.
Yes. Do you remember it was like the Super Bowl shuffle era where we thought maybe we have a chance and we didn't.
Squish the fish.
Yeah, squishing the fish, but we didn't bury the bears.
We did not. I had
we
that
did not.
t-shirt.
Yeah, we did not do that. It was a very sad time. I remember that too. But so super quick, just before we run out, we talked about some of those short stories. There's a few short stories that are set in Stoughton around some of the other books, but Growing Things and Other Stories is a collection of 19 stories that was just recently published in July. So you talked about the link and the thread between other books and that. What's your favorite short story in there? I read 4 of them.
Yeah. So I don't think I sent you my favorite. Probably there's a story in that. The oldest story that's in that collection is called "It's Against the Law to Feed the Ducks." And I feel like it was the first time, and I wrote it in like 2005, so it was a while ago. And I feel like it was the first time I wrote a story where, I did it does, or I think it does what I really wanted it to do. Because oftentimes you start with a story, and even now you start with a story, and it's this thing in your head, and by the time you finish it, it's different in some way.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's fun. I wasn't expecting that. So that story is told from the point of view of a 5-year-old boy.
Wow.
A family very much like mine at the time, mom and dad and like a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old are vacationing up near Lake Winnipesaukee. And it takes place over a week, and it's from the point of view of the boy.
Yeah.
And something happens. Some terrible calamity happens somewhere else, in the country and the world. Because the parents see it on the TV, but the kid never sees it. So you don't know, because the parents are trying to hide it from them. And as the story goes, it's really kind of sad. Like things just start sort of falling apart on the edges, and the parents are trying to be like, hey, with the 5-year-old, because they don't want to tell him what's happening. But, you know, it all starts to sort of crumble apart toward the end of the book.
And it all comes to, yeah, the
You know, again, I
surface.
think I give like a few clues as to what might have happened to you know, what was the calamitous event or not. But just in terms of, I don't know, just in terms, I feel like that story is, I feel like it's one of my most horrific, even though I think people would have a hard time like saying this is why it's a horror story. Like, you can't
Really?
point to, but just in terms, I feel like, I hope the emotions that people feel when they read that.
Yeah.
And I've had like a really good response to that story, you know, throughout the years, because it's appeared in a few other things besides this collection.
Wow, that's good to know. I know that what I'll be doing is I'll be heading down to Mad Mama Vintage and getting my signed book, but also
Yeah.
be getting, you know, purchasing some more of these. Like I said, I've read some of your stuff, and it's fantastic,
Thank
and
you.
it's definitely not the stuff that I would generally read. So kudos to you
Thanks.
for your great writing and ability to, you're right, put that empathy component in there that you can actually see from that perspective, even if it's creepy.
Thanks.
So I want to thank you for coming today, you know, coming to Community Forum. This was a great conversation, and I hope that people will get out on October 30th, 6:30 at the library to come out and see you and, you know, just come check out your book. You know, any of the books for that matter. I think it's worthwhile, even if it's, you know, the new one that's out right now, The Growing Things and Other Stories.
Sure.
You know, if that's the start, that's a great, you
That's
know.
a great place to start.
It's
No,
a great
and thank
place.
you for having me. I mean, this was a lot of fun, and this hour just flew by.
Yes, it did. It did. This is what happens when you're talking about horror. Well,
Yes.
I would like to just say thank you to the folks at Community Forum. Thank you for watching. Special thanks to Mike Hammond, Jeff Pickett, Dave Young, CJ Mullen, Roy Cohen, of course, Gina Coe, Leo McGowan. We miss you, Leo. Hope you're doing well. And also Ellen Penniman. You know, thank you guys for everything and for your help with the show. Have a great day, everyone.